You know, man, we live in a time in modern day culture where being an entrepreneur and starting up a business has become real popular, way more popular than what it used to be. And, you know, as a fellow entrepreneur and business owner myself, I love it. I think it's very dope to see a lot of people wanting to jump out and take risk. But I think people think that I'm going to start the LLC up, I'm going to get an EIN or a tax ID number, and I'm good. The money's just going to start flowing in. And unfortunately, my friend, it just does not work like that. This is the KYREN Monteiro Show, Season 3, Episode 3, and we're going to talk about Beyond the LLC. Let's go. We gonna always bring y'all in, man, with some great music. Yeah, it is. Let go.
When I started with this vision, people thought I was a scrub.
Yeah.
Now they show me love.
You would think I was the plug.
Now I got the keys and I'ma show you what it is.
Yeah.
King on this grind, you know I handle my feet.
You know I'm getting to these
Blessings, 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 blessings,
Yes, sir.
blessings, 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 blessings.
Tell them something like
Haters hate, but we okay. Stacking chips, Frito-Lays, check the circle, zero lanes,
Squad of Fighters.
we beat the game.
What's going on, everybody? I want to personally welcome y'all to my podcast, the KYREN Monteiro Show, Season 3, Episode 3. Round of applause, man. Round of applause, man. Make sure that you check the podcast out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc. Any major platform where podcasts can be streamed, listened to, and downloaded. If you want to check out a high-definition video of the podcast whilst being recorded, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the KYREN Monteiro YouTube channel, search for the KYREN Monteiro Show. It's there. Round of applause for good podcast production. All right, man. Season 3, Episode 3. We're going to call this thing Beyond the LLC. Once again, Beyond the LLC. I'm not going to lie. I'm mirroring this episode from another podcast that I got called the Board Talk Podcast, which is also available on all of those platforms and YouTube. And that podcast specifically is, you know, aimed towards like audio engineers, musicians, music producers, songwriters, podcasters, content creators, things like that. But it is definitely wrapped around audio production and different things relating to the music industry and somewhat the entertainment industry at large. So check that out. Beyond the LLC. If you think that just starting up a business, registering with the state, and just getting an EIN or a tax ID number is all that you're going to have to do to start a business, you are gladly mistaken. Gladly mistaken. So let's dive into it. A LLC is a limited liability company. Some people say a limited liability corporation, but in most states within the United States, I think everybody at this point recognizes them as limited liability companies. They are a hybrid entity, right? Meaning that they are a hybrid between a corporation and a sole proprietorship. Now, you have different business entity types within the United States. You got S corps, you got C corps, you got limited liability companies, which is LLCs, you got limited liability partnerships, you have general partnerships, you got sole proprietors, you got trade names. Like, you have different business types, entity types that you can file within your state. LLCs, limited liability companies, aka LLCs. LLCs are one of the youngest forms of business entity types. They're less than 100 years old. They are very popular because they're not difficult to get started. Most states, they're about $100 to file. And the reason that people like them is because, like I said, they're a hybrid. So they give you the corporate shield like a corporation. But when it comes through tax, when it comes time to file taxes for the business, there was considered a pass-through entity, like how a sole proprietor would be, meaning that when you sign contracts, when you do business deals, when you're doing different things like the business bank account, all of those things, like the business line of credits, all of those things, like the business is its own thing. It is separate from the business owners. But when it comes time to file taxes, it is automatically passed through to the business owners like a sole proprietorship would, right? So you can choose to file it as if it was incorporated, but in most cases, until you're making a certain type of money, most people just, file it as default, which is as a pass-through entity. And you can do some research on that as just for yourself if I confuse you. But it takes more than just registering the LLC through your state, through the Secretary of State or whatever state you live in, or business division of your state. I'm in the state of Indiana, so we file through the Secretary of State business division here in Indiana. It's about $100 here in my state. And then, you can get a EIN, which is an employer identification number, aka a tax ID number, for free through the IRS. Most people think they just file the LLC through the state, go get the EIN number from the IRS, and that's it. But there's more steps to that. And I just want to give y'all 12 tips to think about before you start your LLC, as you start your LLC, or if you already started your LLC and you haven't thought about these things. Let's talk about them, and I'm going to get out your face. First 2 tips, I've already said them. Form the LLC through your state, all right? You got to form the LLC. Second, you got to get an EIN number, obviously. Your employer identification number, a.k.a. a tax ID. Go get that from the IRS. It's free. It is going to cost you to form the LLC through your state. Like I said, it could be $100, maybe to $200. I can't see it being over $200, but in most states it's about $100. Tip number 3, I should say, operating agreement. Very important. Now, what our operating agreement is an internal document that governs how the business is ran on a day-to-day. If the business devolves, how you devolves. It is what the owners agree to, how to run the business. If somebody gets a divorce, if somebody wants to sell their shares, aka member interests of the business, it talks about all of this stuff. If you're going to elect somebody to be like a CEO or a president of the company who's going to run it, it talks about all of these things. And if you was incorporated, they're going to call these bylaws. And the bylaws, the owners of the business and the board of directors would all sign this and agree to this. And this is what governs the corporation. Well, similarly, in a limited liability company, aka a LLC, an operating agreement is going to be the bylaws of the LLC. Essentially, it's going to be the bylaws and the shareholder agreement, if you want to say. It's going to be both of those kind of wrapped into one. And you want to have this. It's also going to identify how many shares of member interest each business owner owns of the business. So if you got 3 owners and the business is split down the middle, well, that operating agreement is going to identify things like that. If there's 2 of you and it's a 60-40 split, the operating agreement is going to show so-and-so over here owns 60% of the business, so-and-so over here owns 40%. And it's just real important to have that. Number 4, have a business checking account. You want to have a separate account, a separate business account from your personal checking account. Very important. And it makes sense to get it where you're already banking at. It comes with different benefits to that, such as, if I have a business account at this bank and a personal account and I want to pay myself, all I have to do is sign in and transfer money from the business account to my personal account. That's writing the check. So you want to have a separate business account for your business, and you want to have them at the same bank as your personal. And if you don't have a personal account where your business account is, get a personal account. It comes with perks. Number 5, business insurance. If you have your business in a commercial office space like I do, and some people who do business around me, you want to make sure that you have business insurance for several reasons. To cover the equipment, right? If something happens, you want to be able to cover all of your physical equipment that your business owns, and those assets. If something happens to the business itself from some kind of catastrophe or unfortunate situation, you want to have business insurance for that. If your business gets into a lawsuit, you want to have business insurance. It is important to have business insurance, my friend. Tip number 6, permits and licenses. If you're selling stuff, you might have to have certain kind of seller's permit. If you're doing certain kind of businesses like, being a lash tech, nails or something, you might have to have certain licenses like that. Photographers and videographers, if you're flying drones, you got to have licenses for things like that. You might have to have local permits and things like that for whatever type of industry you're in. You want to make sure that any kind of permit and licenses that you have, right? Tip number 7, contracts and agreements. It's very important in business that you have contracts and agreements in place that protect you legally and the people that you're doing business with. We don't live in a society where word of mouth is good enough. You got to have paper trail. You got to be able to prove it on paper. You got to have some evidence. Make sure that you have contracts and agreements. Super important. Point number 8, state filing. So if you form an LLC within your state, there are something that is called an annual entity report. That is basically letting your state know, hey, as a business, we're alive and well. And there is a fee for that annually. Make sure that you do that, right? Because it's going to keep you in compliance locally within your state, and it's going to make sure that your state knows that your business is alive and well. Sometimes, when you're starting up a business, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're doing almost pretty much everything by yourself, and it's easy to forget things. But make sure that you always have that set on your calendar and keep that top of mind. File your entity reports and whatever state filings that's required. Number 9, accounting and bookkeeping. It's very important to make sure that you keep track of the money. All of your bills you're paying, all of your money coming in, all of your money coming out. You want to be able to keep track of this stuff. You got things like QuickBooks and other type of software that you can use to keep your books straight. Some people real good at things like Microsoft Excel, with the Excel sheets. I personally hate Excel sheets. I would rather use something like QuickBooks. I think paying for something like that is going to make my life a lot easier. But some people might be even old school and do it in the notebook. I don't recommend that at all. But you definitely want to be able to have accounting and bookkeeping and keep track of that. That way, if you get audited by the IRS, you know what's going on. You got to know your numbers. That's just a part of business. You got to know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. So that's a very important tip to give. Tip number 10, billing and invoicing. Once again, tip number 10, billing and invoicing. If you are a business, you have clients or you have customers, right? And with that, they have to have a way to professionally pay for your service. In today's world and modern time, you want to be able to do that from your phone, computer. You want to make sure you have options outside of just cash. It's very important to have some kind of system in place. Me as a service provider, my business is, we send out invoices directly to the client. And it's very easy. We can use things like PayPal. We can use things like QuickBooks, to send out invoices. And it legally protects us and the customer. There's contracts, and certain kind of like policies that we attach so they know what they're paying for, what they're not paying for. If you're selling products, like in online stores or something like that, or running like an insurance company, obviously you're just going to have, if you're offering certain kind of products in a store or something that's, recurring every month. Obviously, you might have an app or you got that where they can just go and pay for the product or the service. But you want to make sure that you have that set up for your business. It's going to be real important so that you can get paid. Number 11 is meeting minutes. Once again, meeting minutes. Basically, you want to have monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual meetings for your business. Even if you're having a meeting with yourself, you want to be able to have those meetings and keep track of it. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep track of that stuff, because if you ever are in a lawsuit, the judge is going to want to make sure that you're running your business separately from yourself. That's the whole point of filing an LLC, is to make sure that you're running a business separate from yourself. It's totally its own thing. Also, to tie into that, that's another important reason why you want to have an operating agreement, so that if you are in a lawsuit, that judge can see, hey, I am running a separate legal business, separate company, separate entity from myself. It is not the same as me personally, and here's how I can prove that. It's another reason you want to have an operating agreement. Make sure you have meeting minutes. Make sure that you have your meetings. It's very important. Point number 12, working on your business versus in your business. Once again, working on your business versus working in your business. There's a difference between working on your business and working in your business. Whatever business that you own, remember that you own it. Remember, you are the CEO of that business. You are the business. So you need to have time to work on the business as a CEO. Then you need and president and leader of that business. But then there are times where you have to work in the business, right? And working in your business is where you are the employer of that. So prime example, I own a business called Frequency Canvas LLC. It is an audio production company. I'm the business owner. I'm the CEO. I'm the president. So I have to have time as a CEO and president to work on my business, right? Whatever that may be, bookkeeping, invoicing, marketing strategies. However, from an executive level, I need to grow and work on that business. Then there are the times where I have to work in the business, right? Doing things like the actual services that I offer to clients, doing things like this podcast, right? All of these kind of different things are working on the business and working in the business. So you have to make sure that you separate those two and that you delegate time periods for that. So look, man, that's just 12 tips that came to mind. There's obviously way more, but round of applause for you hanging on in here, listening to your boy, man. Make sure that you like and share the podcast on all your social media platforms. If you want to listen to the podcast, make sure you go to platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc. If you want to see high definition videos of this podcast while it's being recorded, make sure that you head over to our YouTube channel. This is the KYREN Monteiro Show, Season 3, Episode number 3. Called Beyond the LLC. We out of here. Let go.
When I started with this vision, people thought I was a scrub. Now they show me love, you would think I was the plug.
Yep.
Now I got the keys and I'ma show you what it is.
King on the grind.
You know I had on my feet.
You know I'm getting to these
blessings, 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 blessings.
Haters hate, but we okay. Stacking chips, Frito Lays.
Tell them check the circle.
Zero lanes.
Yeah, squad of fighters.
We beat the game.
Shout out to every visionary trying to be above average. Blessings.